my fellow Americans tonight with a heart full of gratitude and boundless optimism. I profoundly accept this nomination for President of the United States.
Yesterday on the South Lawn, last night on the South Lawn of the White House, President Trump formally accepting the nomination of the Republican Party for another term as President of the United States. Joe Biden's people are outside attacking senators and police officers, and that's the America they're promising. Don't let the news media lie to you about it. Happy Friday to you and welcome. It was a great convention. Let's start with that. 4 days and nights, mostly nights, of amazing speeches by amazing people telling truly remarkable personal stories. Stories of dealing with the insanity of the left, the insanity of the Obama-Biden administration, the insanity of the Democratic Party. A lot of converts, former Democrats, speaking at the convention. We'll have to see on Election Day how many converts there really are across the country as the Democrats continue to burn our cities, attack our police, to pull on the thread, to unravel the fabric of society that holds us together, and they're destroying that quite methodically and systematically. After the event, in fact, during the event on the South Lawn of the White House, you might have heard some boat horns in the background. You know, they're mentally impaired. The Democrats have many millions of very severely mentally impaired followers, many of whom are violent, very violent, and they operate in mobs. In fact, my best girl is doing business downtown today, and we had a talk about a variety of things, and where to go and where not to go and where to park, and look out for the mobs because the Democrats have made the city a very dangerous place. Senator Rand Paul, again, and this is remarkable, Senator Rand Paul was attacked by a mob while just outside the White House last night, along with his wife, and a thin blue line of police stood bravely between the mob and Senator Paul, an ignorant, dumb, low IQ, violent, criminal Democrat mob. Senator Paul suggested this morning maybe many of them are from out of state, may have flown in, may be funded by groups. Suggested the Justice Department should be looking at precisely that. And in Washington, D.C., businesses are boarding up again because the left is here, and the left is a vile, violent, criminal mob waging an uncivil war and a revolution. You know, vive la revolution, vive la resistance. Hillary's a member of the resistance. And I want to get into all this morning because Senator Rand Paul's moment out on the streets, it was more than a moment out on the streets last night, quite remarkable. And I've got audio for you of the violence. I've got audio of Senator Paul, who was on the Fox News channel this morning talking about his experience last night with his wife on the streets, and the ignorance of the vile, violent mob. And of course, the Democrat mayor, Muriel Bowser, isn't lifting a finger to restore order in the city. We've got a big civil rights march today. It is the 57th anniversary of the March on Washington, Martin Luther King. And there's every reason to believe that there will be violence because the Democrats are here, and the Democrat Party is a violent criminal mob in the streets of our cities. And it's not only predictable and foreseeable, it is presumed that there will be a great deal of violence against property and people today in Washington, D.C., because, you know, the anniversary of the March on Washington, any excuse for mob violence, and that's the Democrat Party. Joe Biden told the media, there's never any reason for violence, and the media says, see, he's against it, and that's it. That's all you have to say when you're a Democrat, and then the media, they fluff you. They apply an extra layer of chapstick, and they get to work on performing acts of journalistic gratification upon you because they're not legitimate truth seekers or truth tellers. They're not journalists at all. They're part of the mob. They're the sort of club stripe tie, the pink pant. What do they call those belts? You know, with the little whales on them that they get up at Martha's Vineyard. You know, that crowd. They're never going to find themselves in the middle of it. And if they do, they'll capitulate and surrender immediately because they're cowards. Now, we also noticed that CNN, I watched CNN this morning, and MSDNC, and neither one of them, neither CNN nor MSDNC, while they were attacking President Trump and attacking the fact that there were more than 1,000 people on the south lawn of the White House, and the media very upset, they're beside themselves, their panties are in a very uncomfortable wedge once again this morning, because not everybody was wearing masks on the south lawn of the White House, and they weren't practicing social distancing. It's fascinating, though, that they didn't get to the mob attacks on Senator Rand Paul, who knows something about violent attacks being waged against him by Democrat lunatics. And he's got more than enough experience at this point, I think. But the news media didn't show, since CNN and MSNBC, didn't even show Senator Paul in the midst of the violent mob of lunatics, of mentally ill people. And there are just a lot of mentally ill people loose on the streets of certainly Washington these days and elsewhere. I don't know how they organize the mentally ill, but the Democrats have successfully organized, community organizer, president and all that stuff, organized the violent mob. It's extraordinary, but they didn't complain that the violent mob wasn't practicing social distancing when they were violently attacking D.C. police and trying to murder a U.S. senator and his wife. As he described the situation, they were threatening to kill him, and they're cursing, and we have to bleep a lot of because Democrats, they like the F word more than just about any other word that we know. And they are vile and repugnant, violent mob, and the news media is as corrupt as any corrupt organization. The mafia is more honest and legitimate than CNN, and that is no joke. I'd rather hang out with a bunch of mafia people at this point, if you want to have a nice, honest conversation, than with CNN people, because they are nothing even close to something that you would call journalism. So I want to get into that little rant, and I do want to get into that, and also updates on Kenosha, where the National Guard has been sent in, military has been sent in, because the Democrats refuse to control the streets of American cities. The governor there, this governor in Wisconsin, what a weak sister this little man is. Man, this little mouse of a pipsqueak muttering through his mask. You can't hear a thing he's saying. He's just a cowardly little embarrassment of a man. And I apologize for using the word man. And it's really something. But we'll get an update on that. And now the new hero of the revolution, of course, is the man. They're very upset. They're hearing that the man shot by the police officer in Kenosha is handcuffed to his hospital bed. And they say, but he's paralyzed. Why is he handcuffed to his bed? Well, maybe it's the criminal sexual assault warrant. Maybe it's the history of the gun crimes, and maybe it's the domestic violence. Maybe it's a history, a criminal history, and so on. And they don't trust him to not flail about and assault people. Maybe it's the fact that he didn't cooperate with the police when they drew their guns on him and issued orders to stop and drop the knife and all this other stuff. But he's the new hero of the revolution because, racist cop. That's about all there is to it. But again, last night at the Republican National Committee, not at all like the Democratic National Committee, and it was I was texting my friend Marty last night and said, I think Pelosi's head is exploding. I think the heads are exploding all over the place. Because President Trump, he used the White House as a backdrop for a campaign but it's the age of the Wuhan. He wanted to go to Charlotte, he wanted to go to Florida, he wanted to go to various places for the convention, but because the Chinese Wuhan Red Death, they couldn't do all those normal things. So the news media, they're in a constant sort of transgender hissy fit all the time, and they honestly, what an awful, horrible group of people they are. They should be ashamed of themselves, and I know they're not. But I've got lots of great audio for you, and also audio from the. I'm riled up about this because I was going through the media and looking for their coverage of Rand Paul being mobbed by the violent Democrat criminal mob, and no coverage at all. Complete blackout. It's like North stinking Korea, except without the excuse, because in North Korea, at least the media there have the excuse that they'll be killed if they report something unfavorable to, that really have a real media like us. But it is just extraordinary what the media does not cover in this country, and the way they slant and spin and criminally misrepresent the news. In fact, on CNN today, did you see that the 17-year-old that shot and killed people in Kenosha, on CNN today, he's a Trump supporter. None of the mobs in the street are Trump supporters. The child sex offender that was shot in the head by the 17-year-old as he was chasing the 17-year-old across and throwing things at the 17-year-old. He's apparently not a Biden supporter. He's not a Democrat at all. The child sex offender that was shot, he was the first person killed in Kenosha the other night, shot in the head in this car lot as he was chasing and throwing things at the 17-year-old. That is apparently what instigated the gunfire. And the New York Times says that there was all kinds of gunfire going on at the same time, and it's not clear who was shooting at whom, but one of the guy who was shot in the arm in Kenosha, he had a pistol in his hand, and he may have been shooting at the 17-year-old. But the news media, they're like the criminal defense attorneys for the criminals, and if you engage in self-defense when you are the target and the victim of mob violence, then you're the villain, because they don't believe in your right to protect yourself. They don't believe in your right to the Second Amendment rights. They don't believe in your First Amendment rights. They believe in their First Amendment rights, but not your First Amendment rights. And God forbid you'd want to go to church. They don't believe in those rights. But it is some pretty darn extraordinary stuff that we are witnessing here. And holy cannoli, let me tell you. All right, so lots and lots of things to get to, as you can see. We continue to be at 888-630-9625, and let me start with the convention last night and all of that good stuff. Also, I have a couple of lists of unarmed white people shot to death by the police that the news media could care less about, and that the violent mobs in the streets don't care about, because they're racists. You see, the mobs in the streets are racist. The Democrat Party has always been the racist party. They're still the racist party, and I want to get into some of that as well. Lots and lots of good stuff. All right, so let me see. Michael, we want to get to some audio, I believe, from the big convention last night, and talk about the president's speech. It was 70 minutes long, which might be considered a little long, but let me say that it was a good, solid, pretty epic in many ways speech. He stuck pretty strictly to the teleprompter, to the speech itself, and didn't deviate very much. A pretty well disciplined speech. The production values were incredible. The White House as the backdrop this way, the Washington Monument as the backdrop that way, the big audience with people clapping, which the Democrats didn't have because they had a Zoom call from basements around the country because they're a cowardly and fearful bunch, but they're a violent mob at the same time. It's an interesting combo that they've struck here. Must be the drugs, I'm thinking. And extraordinary stuff. Ivanka Trump was amazing. Ann Dorn, who is the widow of retired police officer David Dorn. Ask Jake Tapper, who is David Dorn. He doesn't know. David Dorn, the retired 77-year-old police officer who was murdered by Joe Biden voters. If we're going to play that game, John Berman at CNN, let's go ahead and play that game. He was murdered by Joe Biden voters in St. Louis, and they live streamed him dying and gasping his last breaths on the internet. And his widow was on last night talking about what kind of country you want to have.